friends, and welcome to the CUInsight Network podcast. My name is Lauren Culp. I'm the publisher and CEO at CUInsight.com, and it's my job on the show to have conversations with those thought leaders who support the credit union community. We get to identify issues affecting the industry and have a discussion on some of the best practices that we can use to learn from one another and improve our credit unions. Really excited about my guest on today's show. We are joined by Oscar Porras, the Senior Consultant of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Humanidei. Oscar, thank you so much for making the time to be here today.
Thanks, Lauren. Super excited to be here. It's my first ever podcast, so so I'm excited to be here and share with you today. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we cannot wait to get started. Let's jump right into the conversation. So you're the Senior Consultant of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Humanidei. Really excited. We've got a great relationship with Humanidei. I'd like to start, though, with a little bit of background on you. So most of us didn't grow up thinking that we would get to work with credit unions someday. So I'm curious, what did you want to be growing up? And then what was the inspiration to take the gig as the Senior Consultant of DEI at Humanidei?
Yeah, so growing up, I really wanted to do something with either architecture or drafting. It's funny because I'm part of this micro generation that exists that they say exists as Xennials, right, between like 78 and like 82, like right there. And so I really enjoyed drafting in high school, and I actually started my freshman year in high school drafting with like on a drafting table with a pencil and rulers. But by senior year, I was designing on a computer, and so just that in those 4 years, this change from analog to digital, I really lived that. And then so when I started college, I actually got a part-time job working as a teller for a credit union who happened to have a branch on campus. And so as one of the few bilingual employees at the credit union, I saw that there was really a need for a more diverse workforce. I was fortunate enough in my career to have some amazing leaders who helped me progress in my career. And really, as time went on and I moved up, our front lines definitely became more diverse, but, managers and that executive leadership really remained very homogenous. And so ultimately that was the inspiration to join the Humanidei team and help credit unions be more inclusive organizations and ultimately connecting diverse candidates with awesome credit unions.
That's wonderful. I love to hear about folks who had one sort of drive as a kid, architecture, and then maybe did a 180 to a different role. Though there's always some sort of similarities, like a common thread, between what we're looking at here. So let's pretend that you and I meet at a conference in person. Could you give us your elevator pitch on what Humanidei is and where you really add value to credit unions?
Yeah, so definitely. So, I would say that at Humanidei, we really help credit unions build capacity for becoming more inclusive organizations. And ultimately, that helps credit unions better serve their members and be the employer of choice for talented, mission-driven people.
That is perfect. Well, we've gotten the chance to work with Humanidei a number of different ways over the last couple of years. And I know everything coming out of Humanidei is really interesting thought leadership. I want to talk about the concept of the war for talent, which I know is something that everyone at Humanidei talks about a lot. And we know there's never really been a more critical time to invest in people, especially with there's so much competition for good talent. We see, even a lot changing right now with the Great Resignation. And can you talk a bit about what the war for talent is as it relates to credit unions, maybe for someone who's never heard that phrase before? And what credit unions, how can they attract and develop and retain a diverse group of the best possible talent? I mean, it's like the $1 million question, right? But what are your thoughts on the war for talent? Yeah. What is it, and how can credit unions win it?
Yeah, it's really difficult right now for credit unions to find talent, right, at all levels. People are thinking about work differently. I think strategic DEI integration is key to attracting top talent. People want to work for organizations that value them and others for their unique qualities. They want to work for organizations where they can bring their whole selves to work, right? So I think developing people really means providing a clear path for career growth. Succession planning is great because when done through a DEI lens, credit unions and its employees have a plan in place for what the future looks like, with diversity being a key part of that plan. Employees want to be heard. ERGs or DEI committees help create a platform for employees to contribute ideas, training opportunities, or just grow professionally. People are just more engaged with their organization when they feel valued. So that really helps with retaining talent. I think that a funny story that I like to share, when I first started working at the credit union, I because I come from an immigrant background, I didn't have professionals in my life, and so I would wear white sports socks to work with my dress shoes because I didn't know, right? Or when I bought my first suit, there's that white stitching on the back of sports suits that, or
Yeah.
coats that you're supposed to take out, but these were not things that were told to me, or they weren't normal to me, right? And
Right.
so when you have these strategic DI integration things, it really helps build capacity for people, and really grow and learn and be more professional and all of those things. And that's why I became engaged in the credit union movement, because the mission speaks for itself, right? People helping people, that's what we're all about. So that's actually going to just attract a certain type of person, I think. But the development and the investment into your people, that's where you help to really retain a diverse group of people.
That's super insightful, I think, from the perspective of a lot of credit union leaders. That might not have even been something to cross the radar of, thinking about how to do. And it's also incumbent on us to really be taking the actions toward, the actual intentional actions towards a diverse, talented workforce. So I'm curious from your perspective too. We even talk about the war for talent and the ways that credit unions maybe are well positioned to win the war for talent, and then there are a lot of challenges. I know that Jill Nowacki, your president and CEO at Humanidei, and Randy Smith, our co-founder, were at the Reach conference recently, and I heard there was a lot of chatter about Bank of America raising their minimum wage to $48,000 a year and things like that are hard for credit unions to compete with. So I know from your perspective, you're passionate about the strength of that diverse leadership team and really the importance of credit unions knowing and designing for their communities and for their members. So can you talk about how you really see that intentionality around diversity come into play when credit unions are working to serve their communities, and maybe especially those typically marginalized people in their communities?
Yeah, who better to understand the needs of marginalized community than someone from that community, right? I think when credit unions are being intentional about diversity, the frontline staff begins to reflect the community, but so does the leadership and the board members as well. I think this leads to new ideas and ways of doing things. Again, when I first joined the credit union 20 years ago, it meant that my Spanish language ability helped members be comfortable with asking about other products and services. I have one family that I know. They used to come into the office to cash their paychecks every other week. That's all they did. At first they were just happy to be able to talk to someone in Spanish, right? Then it became about opening their children's savings account. Eventually, it meant getting their first personal loan. That led to their first financed used car. 15 years later, prior to departing that credit union, they happened to stop at the branch that it was managing at the time, and they had since purchased their own home. Their daughter had gotten married, and they were helping. They were helping the young couple put their first down payment down on a home that they wanted to purchase. Now, all of them were credit union members, including the new husband, because the daughter didn't want to leave the credit union. He said, you have to, I'm going to add you joint to my account and we're going to stay here at the credit union, right? And that's an example of helping marginalized people move into mainstream financial world, right? Both the credit union and the members had a mutually beneficial relationship. That's the credit union dream, to help members grow in that way, right? And so when credit unions are purposeful in their diversity strategies, I think that example is just, it's amplified, right? It's expanded on multiple times over. And when you want to reach these marginalized communities, that's how you do it.
That is such a great piece of insight, I think, for all of our listeners. And I'm curious too, we know Humanidei is a really innovative company. The organization as it exists today is very different from a lot of the other ones in the credit union space. break out the crystal ball for me. I know there's been a lot of disruption in financial services over the past few years. I mean, we've seen the great resignation, a lot changing in the sort of global workforce, but more specifically for credit unions and financial services, what overall trends are you seeing, and where is Humanity's focus when it comes to innovating to meet some of these challenges as that the credit union faces, that the credit union industry is facing at a high level?
Yeah. I think technology continues to play a major role in how we work, right? We used to talk about how the rise of technology would replace people, right? COVID really made credit unions pivot in how they help the members and continue to run their organizations faster than I think anyone could have predicted prior to the pandemic. Although technology and machines have helped us navigate the pandemic, there's still a very human element to all of it, right? You still need humans who can think critically to run those machines. At the Reach conference, there was a CEO panel, and one CEO discussed how their branches had moved to the ITMs, the interactive teller machines, and they were able to deploy staff from home via those ITMs so they could continue to help members. It was seamlessly overnight, right? It was not an issue for them, and so you need to now behind that is the fact that you need to have people who can bring that creativity and ideas to our organizations. And so, helping credit unions find the people that they need to be successful is something that I think we're really passionate about. Because they're the ones that are going to create those environments where those ideas are flourishing.
That ITM is such a good example too of ways that credit unions can embrace technology as the world is changing, but still offer that member service that they've always been known for. And you mentioned that finding those right people is something that, as an organization, you're passionate about. What are those things that Humanity is passionate about as an organization? Finding the right people, is that the main one?
Yeah, that's the main thing, right? Because ultimately, again, you have these strategies, but that all comes from people, right? And we use those people, and people are the ones that leverage the technology to deliver those products and services. Because yes, technology is important, and yes, we're moving to a more digital world, but having said that, there's still a very human connection. There needs to be a human connection behind all of that, and so that passion for people, it's in the name, right? It's the humanity, and so that's really where that passion lies, for sure.
That is wonderful. Well, if there was one thing that you think credit unions need to do better to stay relevant in this fast changing marketplace, what would that one thing be?
That's pretty easy, Lauren. It's focusing on diversity. I think diversity is key. Younger generations are more diverse than ever, and staying relevant really means being reflective of the communities that credit unions serve. That's really where, if you could say one thing, definitely diversity.
Diversity, absolutely. Well, and it's built right into the Humanity name. So I think that is a good sign that you all are living that out. As we start to wrap up the show here, we always like to have some fun with rapid fire questions to let our listeners get to know you better. And so we say the questions are rapid, but your answers don't have to be. So a lot of insight that you shared for us today on the diversity, equity, and inclusion side. We want to get to know you personally a little bit better. So here we go. What is a recent purchase that you didn't know you needed that has become something you cannot live without?
Yeah, when I first joined Humanity, I was really excited to work from home, and I was like, oh, I don't need an office. I'm gonna have my laptop. And then I was like, I really miss my second screen. So I got a second screen, and now I just can't function without my second screen. It makes me feel more it makes me feel more productive. It's just, I just can't imagine living without my second screen anymore. So when we were at the Reach conference, I take my laptop and I'm just like, I wish I had my second screen. So
I am the same way. The CUInsight team is all remote as well. And for the first probably year, I didn't have a monitor external to my laptop. And once I got that and made the switch, it made all the difference. I've seen some virtual, not virtual. I've seen some options where you could pack down a little monitor that slides over your laptop and then folds out with two
Oh,
screens.
yeah, that would be really cool. I don't know if I'm quite there yet, but that
Yeah.
would be really cool.
If the world opens back up and we hit the road a bunch more often, maybe I'll have to invest in one too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind for you, and why is that?
I would actually say it's two people, and that's my parents. They definitely got different things from each of them. My father definitely instilled a strong work ethic, right? And I think that that's served me really well in my career. My mom has this ability to just forge ahead of any challenges she's ever faced, and from a place of a lot of love, and that's something that I think is very different than my father in that sense. And so that's something that I think hopefully I'll get both of those things from my parents, and um, take the best of those two, and really just coming to this country as immigrants and being able to become citizens, and just trials and tribulations and all of that. Definitely they've gotten to this place of the American dream, right? And that's something that's really inspiring.
That is so inspiring. Great to hear. I love to hear the story. And as we sort of think about how we hear a lot that parents are, or somebody that a lot of our guests have mentioned when they hear the word success. So I love to hear that. Random question for you. What are you listening to on Spotify these days, or Spotify, I'll say, or your platform of choice? Some folks have migrated away
Yeah.
from Spotify.
Yeah, I've been a Spotify user for a really long time. I actually adopted pretty early on, so I love Spotify, and I have like several playlists. Uh, but I keep two things on. I think I keep two lists on rotation, and that's my regional Mexican music, Spanish music, and then my '90s rap music collection. Uh, it's funny because I think music is one of those things where it's really reflected in culture, right? Of like the my very much my Mexican roots and being tied culturally to that. But then like growing up in the 90s here on the West Coast, and just very into rap music and hip hop and that kind of thing. And so yeah, I have those two lists on rotation pretty regularly. So yeah.
I love it. That is incredible. All right. Any books that you have gifted or that you just think everybody should read?
So, full disclosure, I'm not a big reader. But I know Jill is. But I did ask Jill recently, hey, can you create a list of books that I should read? Because I definitely need some help. But having said that, I would recommend "Safe Enough to Soar" by Frederick Miller and Judith Katz. It really talks about this concept of interaction safety, and it's all about creating a space, I think, where people can openly discuss and collaborate to help organizations soar. And so, I think there were definitely examples of the book where I said, "Oh yeah, I've been there before," right? And so, and it's a short read too. So again, because I'm not a big reader, like that was a great book for me. But I think that's something I would definitely recommend to others.
I've been getting really into the Audible books, being able to just listen
Okay.
to someone reading me the book, like on a plane or on a drive somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's great. I'll definitely add that one to my list, and we'll link to it here for all of our listeners as well. Let's say that the calendar is empty. What do you do to unwind outside of work?
Yeah, I love this question because, just this time of year, it's actually just a phone call I got a little bit before the podcast was Oregon Ducks football. So we'll be on our way to the game this weekend. And outside of that, I enjoy homebrewing. I've been busy this summer building out a shed office here in the backyard, so I haven't had a chance to do much homebrewing this year, but that's something I've always enjoyed doing.
That is awesome. I will have to get some tips from you. All right. Well, we'll link to everything we talked about in the show notes today. My last question for you is any final thoughts that you would like to share, or a final ask that you have of our listeners?
Yeah, I would always say, when you're sitting at those tables of leadership, just look around and ask yourself, like, who's not in the room right now, and what can I do to make sure that they are in the room, right? I think, again, I've had some amazing leaders in my career who, had they not done that, had they not encouraged me, had they not, uh, you know, pl- very purposely put me in places to be recognized, to be seen, to have my voice heard, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so, from that perspective, I think as leaders, we need to ask ourselves, okay, who's not represented here, and what can we do to bring them along, right?
What a perfect way to end the show. Always look around that room where decisions are being made and bring in those people that are not there. So I love that advice. To all of our listeners today, we'll link to everything that Oscar talked about in our show notes, so feel free to check those out. Oscar, thank you so much for being on the show. Really enjoy getting to know you and appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Lauren. It's been great. First podcast, so
You
really
nailed
appreciate the opportunity. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, stay well, my friend. And thank you to all of our listeners today for the CUInsight Network podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.